Rolling in 3, 2, 1.
Shot 5, take 3.
Action.
Today we're going over behind the scenes of my latest short film, Cheating Fate, and if you haven't seen it yet, spoilers coming. This is to click the link. First, I want to explain my goals for working on this film. And yes, I do think that it's extremely important when learning to be a filmmaker that you set specific goals when you're taking a project on. Say that you just learned a new technique or that you saw a new style you want to try out for yourself. Well, you can use your projects as opportunities intentionally to learn those things. For me, I use this as an opportunity to knock the rust off and get my feet wet again in filmmaking. It had been almost 5 years since I had been on a set, so I wanted to keep things as simple as possible because I've definitely made the mistake of trying to tackle too big of projects that I was not ready for. So the main goal for this one was to take things slow, ease back into it, and get a confidence booster and an easy win so that I could really fire back up my passion for filmmaking and get my motivation levels higher. That, and I also wanted to start meeting new people to collaborate with in my area that were passionate about film so I could work with them on future projects. I found this script on r/producemyscript, which is a Reddit community of screenwriters who post their scripts and log lines in hopes of finding a producer to pick it up and make the film, often for free, and if not, then cheap. You can also post requests for scripts on there, which is the route that I took. I explained my situation, said that I needed something that could be done with 2 actors in a single location, and I got a ton of replies, some of which that I'm keeping in my backlog so I can work on in future projects. But all that to say is if writing isn't your strong suit, or if you are just looking to work with a dedicated writer, make sure you check this place out, link in the description. Then it came time to do the casting for the film. I posted a casting call on our local Facebook filmmaking group. I also sent an email out to anyone that leads local acting classes, and I also posted it on the Craigslist community pages. I expected more responses from the Facebook and the emails that I sent out because those were the formal of the two, but ironically, we actually got better audition performances from the 2 people who showed up from Craigslist, which is ultimately who we used for the film. That just goes to show, make sure you cast as wide of a net as possible because you don't know who's going to show up from where. We chose Marcus Barber for our frantic Albert, and we chose Aaron Bartel for our passion killer. They both did an absolutely incredible job. They were so awesome to work with, and I really hope that I get to work with them again in the future. Then we get to our 1 day of production, which takes place in a local hotel suite that I rented out for the shoot. This is something that I've actually done before because if it makes sense for your setting and your characters and your story, then a hotel suite basically serves as a cheap pre-dressed set of an apartment or a house for very little effort and money, which if you ask me is a pretty sweet deal. I'm not sorry for that one, I'm actually proud of it. I learned this actually from Seth Worley on his film Real Gone, which if you haven't seen it, it's probably one of my all-time favorite short films, which he has an amazing behind the scenes of. Links to those are definitely below. Right off the bat, I knew things were going to go extremely smooth for the shoot because of how freaking hard my crew was working right as soon as we got there. I had a stripped down 3-person crew with my very talented brother, Job Gailey, as my AD, Brett Moline as my boom operator, and Josh Sheamus as my key grip. I really cannot sing these guys' praises enough. They worked extremely hard, often stepping outside of their role to make sure that stuff got done, and they were absolutely fantastic. Josh and Brett both actually had 0 experience on a film set before, but I took them beforehand and I showed them the equipment and I trained them for their roles, and they far surpassed my expectations, and it just goes to show that if you can't find a crew, make one. I was the director on this film, but I was also the DP because that is mainly my background and interest. I usually only direct films just so I can get more hands-on cinematography because that is my primary focus. We filmed it on the Blackmagic Pocket 4K cinema camera, which I absolutely love the image that you can get out of this thing, and we also used the newly released DZO Film 20-70mm cinema parfocal zoom lens. This thing is a beast. I did not expect to like this thing as much as I did, but I was super impressed with how much time it saved us on set by being able to avoid lens swaps by having a cinema zoom lens, and the image is just so crisp and sharp out of this thing. It's incredible. For the lighting, I wanted something to fit my envisioned color palette, which is directly inspired by The Shining. The neutral and gold and light brown tones all need to be warmly lit so that it makes it feel just like a normal, ordinary situation, all the while the darker browns and the dark, deep maroon makes it feel like something darker is in play. So poor Josh had to swap every single bulb in the hotel suite with the tungsten colored LEDs that I brought so that we had a consistent warm lighting throughout the entire place. And then we had the 2 practical lamps in the main conversation shot, which really gave us that intimate, motivated light for the conversation. Everything was done in primarily 2 setups. We had all of the stuff in the living area and then all of the stuff in the kitchen area. Since all of the conversation stuff takes place in the living area, that's where we started to film. We did all of that conversation, and then as that leads into the finale, the next thing we filmed was the finale in the kitchen, because it is a natural timeline flow for the actors so they don't have to swap in and out of different parts of the script. And then we ended with the opening shots over in the kitchen area, and that was the martini. Since I wanted that David Fincher minimal camera movement, locked down sort of look, most of the shots were on sticks and pretty straightforward to set up, with the exception being a couple tracking dolly shots and one big dolly move that we used for the turning point of the story. For this, I used the Glide Gear flexible dolly track because it allowed me to have a low profile while carrying a lot of camera gear into a hotel room. I did get the okay to film there from one of the employees, but I didn't know how everyone would have felt about it, so I wasn't comfortable carrying in this large 8-foot track into the elevator or up the stairs. I don't even know how we would have gotten it there in the first place. The Glide Gear flexible dolly track really made it possible to just lay down a really quick and easy setup for a dolly, and on top of it I used my DIY tripod dolly. The most demanding props that we had on the set was actually the liquor. We shot the scene several times over and over again, and in the scene, Thomas is drinking scotch, and if Aaron actually had been drinking real scotch for those times, he would have been sloshed by the 4th or 5th take. Instead, for each of the types of alcohol, I used an old film trick and swapped it out for diluted unsweet tea, using varying amounts of water to dilute it for the different looks of the whiskey and the scotch. Doing this, you have an actually consumable, not very terrible tasting prop that your actors can use, and more importantly, be safe. To leave you with everything going well would be a complete disservice to the project and completely against the point of this YouTube channel, because it is an opportunity and experience to learn, and that being said, I definitely have some takeaways that I would have got from this project. Mainly, I spent way too much time on set. This 5-minute short film took a little over 6 hours to film, and that's not including setup and teardown time. And while I am willing to put in all of the time needed to get the shots for a short film, that wasn't necessarily the case on this one. That sort of production time for a more complex scene, or maybe something that takes multiple locations, isn't really out of the ordinary, but for a 2-person dialogue scene, it really shouldn't have been this tedious. I spent so much time making sure that we had way too much coverage of this scene. We shot it over and over and over again from multiple angles and setups, not just so that I was covered performance-wise, but also so that I was covered in the editing flexibility of making sure that the transitions between the spaces and all of the eye lines and stuff matched up. In the end, we used the shots for the moments in the film that I had planned them for, meaning that a lot of the coverage was completely unnecessary, but it was all there just to make me feel safe, which isn't a terrible thing, but when you have other people involved in your project, you need to make sure that you value their time as much as possible. In the future, I plan on doing a little bit more previs and then on set using the valuable time to shoot towards the edit instead of using all of that coverage and shooting the scene over and over again just to have the flexibility in the edit. Overall, I see this project in my eyes as a huge success, and I accomplished my goal of getting back into the groove of filmmaking and making connections of people to work with and collaborate with in the future, and I will definitely be reaching out to them again. I definitely feel more confident now moving on to more complex projects, and I will be doing that soon. That being said, if you have any questions about this project or how we did something, or if you have something that you would have done differently and you want to completely critique it, then go ahead and leave comments down below. I will happily read those. Until next time, keep those cameras rolling. Peace.
Cut.
I cut as well. I called cut, right?
Cut.
I didn't call cut?
Cut.